Para mí los desastres naturales no existen, ¿no? Como los son desastres humanos y desastres políticos a fin de cuentas. O sea, definitivamente estamos viviendo unos tiempos bien, o sea, de una crisis ambiental enorme, pero es imposible mirar al huracán María como únicamente un desastre natural cuando las condiciones en las que ocurrió, las condiciones que generó, están todas atravesadas por nuestra realidad política.
It's also a disaster of having an infrastructure that is really not serving the people that need it. Puerto Rico's built environment, its agricultural situation is all predicated on this lopsided colonial relationship with the US. And those policies have really undermined the island's ability to recover.
Ese desastre, además de haber sido ecológico, también es un desastre moral. Moral en el sentido amplio de la palabra. La falta de atención de servicios esenciales, la falta de comunicación, la exacerbación de la diferencia entre ser de una clase alta y ser de la clase baja, entre estar montado y ser de los de a pie, que representan es ese prejuicio racial, ese prejuicio económico, ese prejuicio de clase, que si no tenemos una fortaleza en lo que hacemos y en unirnos en los propósitos que son necesarios para poder sobrevivir, no lo podríamos lograr. Y ahora que lo traigo, en lo que más confío es en esas nuevas generaciones que están contra viento y marea.
When you think of protests and resistance in Puerto Rico, I think people immediately would think of the 2019 protests that led to the ouster of then Governor Ricardo Rosselló. It marked a moment when people realized that they didn't have to conform to an incompetent politician, but could actually take action and course correct the history of Puerto Rico under their hands. But protest is also present in many other forms. And resistance in art can be manifested in many ways, of course. It can be as literal as something that you can use in a protest. But even I think the presence of Puerto Rican art is a form of manifesting resistance against colonialism. It's a way of saying, we're here, look at us. We should be taken into account as any other artist.
I was born in Puerto Rico, but I grew up in the States. I've been in New York now for over 20 years. So a lot of my work is informed by both places. But it's also about the relationship historically and politically between these two places that inform who I am. Most of the work, it looks quite critically at the colonial relationship between Puerto Rico and the US and is about ways of reimagining a future for Puerto Rico that is a Puerto Rico that Puerto Rico is in control of. Promesa, the Puerto Rico Oversight Management Economic Stability Act, it's a long word and kind of a cruel acronym because it means promise in Spanish, and it was sort of pitched as an economic relief package for Puerto Rico in 2016. And really, it was just an austerity bill that appointed a U.S. fiscal board to restructure the economy. And so hospitals, social service programs of all kinds were downsized, cut, eliminated. And the most devastating impact of that really were school closures that were closed by the hundreds. And so this was already bad in Puerto Rico, but after Hurricane Maria, things just got worse. We are the oldest colony in the world. And for anybody that was in denial about that, Promesa made it clear. This was stark US colonialism, in our face, where we have limited power in this relationship. After Hurricane Maria, I drove to a lot of the island. And during that time, I noticed so many closed schools. But I also noticed a lot of abandoned school buses, like a graveyard. And so that's eventually what led to the escudos, the protest shields that were made from the decommissioned school buses. Buses are built with an armor, really, on the sides. So they're made from the buses that once protected children. We peeled the sheet metal off the sides of the buses and eventually turned them into these protest shields that would be functional during protests to protect the teachers, the students, and those that were actually protesting in the streets to protect the future of Puerto Rico's education. And here's where you see also the black and white Puerto Rican flag appear, disrupting a very well-known symbol of the flag and transforming it into a symbol of protest. This work is very much inspired by activist groups that were out there in the streets, putting their freedoms at risk and their bodies at risk to protect Puerto Rico's future, really. And so all of these protests were anti-colonial protests. And that's really at the root of what all of this is about. It's a protest of colonialism. It's about power, right? It's about challenging power, right? And reclaiming it.
Mi práctica artística consiste en investigar fotos históricas de Puerto Rico con contenido espiritual, político, social y mayormente lo único que hago es pintura. Ahora mismo el tema que estoy trabajando es una procesión que ocurrió en Vieques en 1999 luego de la muerte del civil David Sanes.
In 1999, a civilian employee by the name of David Sanes Rodriguez was killed when these two practicing bombs in the U.S. Navy in Vieques fell. Even before that, people were already protesting the presence of the U.S. Navy in Vieques, which occupied about 2/3 of the island. But with the murder of David Sanes Rodriguez, people took to the streets. There was a massive protest in 2001 on the expressway where eventually in 2019 people would also protest. After the protest, the Navy left. It was a really powerful event where Puerto Ricans took the power of political action to change history.
Me sumergí por días y días buscando, entonces conseguí estas imágenes del fotógrafo José Jiménez Tirado y las encontré tan poderosas, o sea, tan majestuosas, con un poder espiritual inmenso, político también, como lo poético se hace lo político se hace lo poético. Sin estas imágenes, o sea, hay un símbolo religioso. Los activistas saliendo de la playa, o sea, entrando a tierra con la cruz, donde pusieron la cruz, lo llamaron Monte David por David Sanes. Una ironía, porque 500 años atrás gente entró en barcos con una cruz, pero en un contexto totalmente distinto. Entonces se convierte de algo súper opresivo a un símbolo de defensa en contra del opresor. Entonces, nada, decidí cómo trabajarla, porque para mí, o sea, yo recuerdo eso cuando era pequeño, pero es súper borroso. Tenía 3 años cuando ocurrió, pero nada, siento que esas imágenes son súper poderosas. Para mí es importante la idea de que estas imágenes, estas historias deberían estar presentes en nuestra historia. En mi cuerpo de trabajo es igual, es una pintura, pum, vamos para la otra pintura, vamos para la otra. Sí, así. Como con las imágenes específicamente, sí se relaciona en el sentido de que son imágenes de crisis. Y cómo aún así se puede conseguir lo bello dentro de eso. O sea, cómo hay algo bello dentro de esa crisis. O sea, cómo hay algo poético, cómo hay algo espiritual. Toda esa fuerza, todo ese ímpetu sale de lo que he vivido. O sea, todo lo que me ha tocado vivir, nos ha tocado vivir aquí en esta isla bella.
Art is this amazing entity that gets to ask questions in ways that are messy and complicated, and it doesn't necessarily seek the right answer. And I think that that's part of what's needed right now in considering how to look at Puerto Rico's relationship with the US and how it might change. I think that there's just ways in which art can get at the kind of multi-layered, multifaceted, I don't know, I'm imagining this like really gross knot of a problem, right? Of like how this wonderful, amazing, resource-rich place can actually have its own power returned to it.
Son las acciones positivas las que enseñan y convencen. Eso es hacer política cultural y vecinal y de país.
To produce artistically is a need, right, that we all share and is as important to a collective life as we treat politicians.
Y eso es importante porque una cosa lleva a la otra. Y yo creo que de esa manera los artistas, los creativos, tenemos esa capacidad de hacerlo. De poner una semilla en las personas de que, mira, sí es importante ver esto, pero has mirado también de esta manera. Has visto cómo esto podría también cambiar, funcionar, evolucionar. Y crear entonces oportunidades, no quejarnos y ver siempre lo malo. ¿Cómo podemos mejorarlo?
We don't have all the answers. It's a complicated question, but it is about reimagining an energy that can take us into a future that's a healthier future. So there's protest and there's celebration. There's a way that we reaffirm who we are, and we have to know who we are and believe in who we are, to have the future that we deserve.